Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Parrots. Today is October 26th. We are getting close to Halloween, aren't we? 26th of October 2016. It's Wednesday night. We have a live Bible study, and we are studying in the book of Genesis. We're taking up the ending of chapter 11 and technically beginning chapter 12, which puts us in a whole different type and period of history. We have just ended the Tower of Babel, or Babel. And in verse 10, we get a so-and-so gave birth to so-and-so, gave birth to so-and-so. And we have from verse 10 to verse 26 a genealogy all the way from Seth to Abraham. Who was Seth? Well, remember, there was Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. So we're down to two sons. Down to one son. God knew that the plan we're going to learn about in a few minutes, to use Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to create a nation, and that nation would create a Messiah that would save the whole nation. God knew that was coming. And most Bible scholars believe that is why God did not choose to use Cain as the father of all mankind. And there was only Adam and his living son, who was a murderer, and his dead son. And so Adam and Eve had another son and named him Seth. And it's from the line of Seth that we get Jesus. There really was no law before. I guess it's how you interpret law. And I suppose it's as good a word as any others. But that's how one determined in those days what pleased God and what offended God. And also how his word came to us. So I mentioned that because we're still not under law. And you will hear Christians talk about, well, that was under law. It wasn't under grace. Another thing you'll hear Christians talk about, there are some things, like, for example, the concept of paying tithes, a 10%. Everybody gives 10% to God's work or to the storehouse. And then those in charge of the storehouse determine how that money will be dispersed. Actually, there was a case of paying tithes before there was a law saying do it. So those people that are wondering, we're in the New Testament, do we have to pay the tithe that was under law? Well, actually, we have a case of it before the law. And that's not the only thing. As we get to other things, I'll mention it. But from verse 10 to verse 26, I'm not going to read it. I'm simply going to tell you that it begins, this is the family record of Shem. Not Seth, but Shem. He lived 100 years, and he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the deluge. That's the flood. And it gives us who he fathered. and who that one fathered, etc., all the way down to chapter 27. And here's where it gets interesting, or at least something historical that'd be good for us to remember. These are the family records of Terah, man by the name of Terah. I'll show you the visual again in a minute. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Let me just show you this visual, and then I'll go back and read it. Let's see if we get something that's kind of visual on, kind of okay on both screens. At the very top in green, we have Terah. You see that following that, in the next line, there are 4 names: Abram, Sarai, Nahor, and Haran. I underlined Abram, Nahor, and Haran because they were the 3 sons. He also gave birth to Sarai, which is a girl. And as I mentioned previously, unless the girls do something pretty outstanding, they don't get their names in the Bible easily. So Abram and Sarai were half-sisters. Terah, I don't do this very well looking backwards here. Terah is the father of Haran, Nahor, Sarai, the girl, and Abram. Abram and Sarai have different mothers, but they have the same father. Haran had a daughter named Milcah. From Haran, you'll see an arrow going to Milcah's name. Nahor, so married his niece, whose name was Milcah. And out of the marriage of Haran and Milcah comes Lot. Now, I have right here to Haran. I showed it with a little arrow. When this happened, these people all lived in a place near and it's not that far. It's a little bit west and a little bit north of where the Garden of Eden was. And they make a trip from where they all live, go to a place named Haran. Now, before they make the trip, Haran dies in And I have an idea that's why they named, when they stopped traveling and settled down, they named the place Haran. And I'm sure that was in respect and honor of their brother, Haran. So on the way from to a place which they later named Haran, Terah, the father, his son Abram, his daughter Sarai, who becomes later Sarah, and his grandson Lot. So Terah's grandson Lot is Abraham's nephew Lot. And they go to a place and settle down. And they called that place Haran. Now, the father of all of this, up here at the top, Terah, he dies while they're in this place they've named Haran. So now we have Abram, Sarai, and Lot. Abram and Sarai are half sisters, but they're also husband and wife. And Lot is Abram's nephew. After a while, and I wanted you to see this first, because otherwise it's just so many names. I'm hoping this will make it a little bit more personal. After that, they travel again. They go from the place they call Haran to a place called Canaan. You've heard songs about Canaan land, Israel, and so forth. And let me see. Oh yeah, no changes on my log. All right. When they decide to leave Canaan, they go to a place, they go to Egypt. And while they're here, the king of Egypt is very pleased with Sarah, thinks she's a real good looking woman. And people really haven't changed in that many years, the way they treat other people and the things they do and the things they say and so forth. And so Abram's thinking, maybe he'll be good to us and give us things if he likes her. And he says, yeah, isn't she a nice lady? She's my sister. Well, she was. He failed to say, she's also my wife. It's from there that both Lot and Abraham, are wealthy. That doesn't mean they had money in the bank. Not in those days. If you had wealth, you had animals, you had sheep, you had cows, you had goats, you had tents, you had people that worked for you. That was your wealth. Well, all those are things that require land. My grandfather had 400 head of cattle one time, but he had 400 acres. I believe it was 200 head of cattle on 400 acres. He also had fewer pigs. The pigs that he had were mainly for butchering and eating. The cattle he dealt in and bought and sold, and that's where he made money. With that in mind, you need a lot of land if you've got a lot of cattle, and they all need to graze. And so Lot and Abraham decided they had to split up. They couldn't live on the same hillside. They couldn't live on the same mountain. They couldn't live on the same place because both of them were wealthy in cattle and animals, and they needed more space. So the family sort of uncle and nephew separated. That was the reason that they separated. Abram stayed where they were, and Lot went to a place called Sodom. So now that we have that behind us, maybe some of the rest of this will make a little bit more sense. This is the family records of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in his native land, which was Ur. Abram's wife was named Sarai, and Nahor's wife was named Milcah. She was the she was the daughter of Haran, the father of both Milcah and Ishka. Sarai was barren. She had no child. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, Haran's son, his daughter-in-law Sarai, who was also his daughter. That's what I added. And they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. That's where they intended to go. Now, they didn't get there in one trip, but their intention was to leave Ur, near not that far from the Garden of Eden, and go to what we call Israel now, the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, the name of a place, I'm sure they named it that, reasonably sure, after their relative. Terah, the one that started out with the 3 sons, lived 205 years and died in Haran. So they're halfway to Canaan. Actually, it's a tiny bit more than 50%. But they're on their way to Canaan. And they get to this place called Haran, which happens to be the name of Terah's son, who died. He lived there another 205 years, and he died there. Now we are in chapter 12. And now it's all about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for the rest of Genesis. The Lord said to Abram, "Go out from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you," this is the Abrahamic promise or covenant, God's covenant, God's legal agreement with Abraham. It doesn't say that here. That's what we call it because that's what it was. Go to a place I will show you. You're not there yet. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Now, this is one thing that makes me pleased that the U.S. has been, for all these years, friendly with Israel. Because this is part of that covenant, part of God's agreement, God's contract with Israel. Even though Israel hasn't been born yet, Israel is another name for Jacob. So we're 2 generations away from him. But this is that contract. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. Talking about the Jewish nation of Israel. And you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. And I will curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the people on earth will be blessed through you. How are all the people in the entire earth going to be blessed by Abraham? Because out of Abraham comes Isaac, out of Isaac comes Jacob. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. They have more children and more children and more children, and eventually we get David, and another promise, another contract is made with David. We're going to bless you too. And one of that promise is one of your descendants will rule on David's throne in Jerusalem forever. Now, if you're a human being like you and I, you can't do something forever. But one will sit on David's throne and rule forever. And that is Jesus when he, in the 1,000-year reign, rules over the earth for 1,000 years. And at the end of that 1,000 years, we have the new heaven come down to earth. So when God says, all the people on earth will be blessed through you, it's because of Abraham's descendants comes Messiah. I hope you find that interesting. Okay, now we get back to the story of this family, and we welcome another chatter on our live program. I say that because at the same time we're making a video for YouTube. Here we go. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Now, when I gave you the story, I gave you some general information in advance to help all the little details fall in place. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated. And they were many. I mean, I started out with one lovebird. Right now I've got 7. They have a tenant. Yeah, that's correct. They have a tendency of multiplying. And he acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the site of Shechem at the oak at Morah. Now, when they get there, at that time, the Canaanites were in the land. So they'd gotten where it was Terah's original plan to get them. They were to go from Ur to Canaan. But they stopped in a place called Haran that I believe was named after Terah's dead son, and stayed there for a while, and that's where Terah died. So now that he's died, Abraham and Lot left together. But they're both getting wealthy now, and wealth in those days meant lots of animals. But the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. They're in Canaan. We have many names for the same geography. It was called the land of Canaan. It was called Israel. It's called the Promised Land. There are many names. We're talking about the same geography, the same addresses, all right, the same real estate, the same property. Every time something really, really, really important happens, what do? Remember, we haven't got to the law yet. But every time something real important happens, what happened when Noah got off the ark? Before he planted a vineyard and made some wine and got drunk and all of that stuff happened, what's the first thing he did? He built an altar. And so now they've just been given this tremendous blessing. And Abram said, And God said to Abram, I will give this land to your offspring. So he built an altar there to the Lord who appeared unto him. From there, he moved to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent. There, he built an altar. He kept building everywhere he went, every new milestone in his life. He built an altar. No sacrifices yet. We're not under the law. We're before law. We're before Moses. But some things are pre-Mosaic. And building an altar to recognize something that God does for you is really tremendous. There he built an altar to the Lord, and what did he do? He worshiped him. Where did Satan go wrong? The word worship is a really, really, really important word. In the New Jerusalem, we will have worship. Sunday mornings I preach on prophecy. And we're in the 1,000-year reign. There will be temple worship. But at the very, very, very beginning, before we have the Garden of Eden, before we have a fruit tree, the fruit of which is eaten, before that, we have it in 3 different prophets that give us this information. We don't get it under history, but 3 different prophets give us a little bit of information, and we put them together. And we learn that in heaven, Lucifer was on the worship team. He was a musician. He was an important person. There was hierarchy among the angels, and he was near the top. And it was watching God be worshiped that he got the idea, ooh, I'd like people to do that for me. And he recruited a few to see him that way. And he started a revolution. He wanted to be top man. And God said, not in my heaven. And Lucifer had managed to get on his side 1/3 of the angels. And they were kicked out of heaven. And guess where they landed? Not on Mars, not some other place. They landed on Earth. And any place that you get 1/3 of God's angels, and they were created as messengers and servants. That's what angels are for, to do God's bidding when God needs something done. All the angels that were ever created are still alive. They're not like human beings with wings. They were created to do God's will, to do God's business, to take care of what God needed taken care of. God created us for fellowship. And we get old, we die, we bear children, etc. But the angels aren't that way. And so I should explain, I'm not answering the questions that are coming up. Once I start teaching, I don't usually respond to what's on my board until after I finish with the video, which will be in a little bit. So I want folks to understand I'm not ignoring anybody. That's just the way I do it. Now, let me see where I was. He built an altar. From there, He went to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built another altar to the Lord and worshiped him. Worship is so important. Some people like the idea of worship because when they do it, they feel good. But that's not the purpose of worship. And some people get worship and praise mixed up. Praise, I remember the first dog training class I ever went to. I later became the teacher of dog training classes, but the first one I ever went to, and subsequent ones, and I guess I said the same things when I became a teacher. When you're training a dog and the dog does something right, immediately, as that quick, you praise them, and people say, praise your dog, praise your dog. We say that about children. They do something right. And you've been telling them, don't do that, don't do this, can't do that. And when they do something right, praise them. What is praise? Praise is talking about how good somebody is. They did something really good and you're acknowledging it. When we say, praise God for this, praise God, he answered my prayer, praise God, he delivered me, praise God, he died on the cross for me, we are recognizing divinity. You can also recognize your children. You can recognize an animal. You can recognize the bird. That's praise. That's not a religious term exclusively. It can be used in faith and religion, but it's not exclusively a religious word. Praise is acknowledging. It's sort of a really, really outdone thank you. But worship is for God who he is. Not what he did. Who is he? First verse in the Reese Chronological Bible, John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. Another name for Jesus. That's who he is. That's not what he did, and we don't praise him for that. We worship him for that because that's who he is. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And nothing that he did, nothing that was made was created if it wasn't for Jesus. In Genesis, first chapter, when it said, let us make man. Us is two or more people. Me is one. You is one. It could be plural. But we is at least two. Who's talking to who? See, Jesus didn't start out existing in Bethlehem. Jesus has always been. He took on a body like this with blood that bleeds if you poke it in Bethlehem. But he existed always. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay. This is worship. Recognizing God, not for what he did for you, but for who he is. And he says, and I've got to find out where I left off reading. They went to the land of Canaan. They passed through the land of the site of Shechem to the oak. There were Canaanites living there. They don't get rid of them out of there. That part doesn't come yet. He says, I'll give this land to your offspring. They built an altar and worshipped. Verse 9, then Abraham journeyed by stages to Negev. Now in verse 10, we have Abraham getting to Egypt. And I'm looking at the clock. We probably will finish. Maybe we'll get a little bit into 13 where Abraham and Lot separate, because I already gave you that when I showed you this visual. And I'll show you the visual again before we stop the video. So now we're at verse 10 in chapter 12. There was a famine in the land. Where are they? In Negev. So Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine in the land was severe. If you have famine, that affects people. But what was their job? They were herders. They were not farmers. They were herders. And that would affect, they had to feed not only themselves, but their animals, or they would have lost all their wealth. So they're going to Egypt. Another place, no famine. When they were about to enter Egypt, verse 11, he said to his wife Sarai, look, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they're going to say, this is his wife. Traveling together, logical conclusion. They will kill me, but let you live. They're going to want you so bad. They're going to get rid of me to make you available. Please say you're my sister. That's not really a lie. Please say you're my sister, so it will go well for me because of you, and my life will be spared on your account. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh. So the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. And he treated Abram well because of her. And Abram acquired flocks and herds, male and female donkeys. I'm not sure I understand that one. I don't have a real good understanding of donkeys and mules. But he had male and female donkeys, male and female slaves, and camels. That's a lot of wealth to suddenly have. And verse 17, but when the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with severe plagues because of Abraham's wife Sarah, all of a sudden, people are getting sick, things are not working well, something's going on. It's like me. As you get older, you take more medicine. And if all of a sudden I feel something I haven't felt before, I say, what's the last medicine that was added? And then it used to be that I would never fill a prescription without Googling it first. And you Google the manufacturer because they can't lie on their own website or they would be sued. So I go to their own website and get all the information on something. But now, the medical group I'm a member of now, they never give me a prescription. They just do things on the computer and it's there. And so I pick up the stupid thing and take it before I know anything about it. In fact, I had to tell my pharmacist, I have given up on so many different medications that I told him, don't you dare give me a 90-day prescription. You give me only 30-day on something that's new. Because in all probability, it's not going to do well and I'm going to quit taking it. So don't even give me 90 days worth. But I looked at what's the last thing that happened. That's what I'm going to check and see if that could be the possibility, if that could be what's causing this. And I look at that medicine and I look, are any of my symptoms on that list? Okay, out goes the medicine. Now, the king of Egypt, things are not going well. He's got another man's wife in his harem, and things are not going well. When did they start to not go well? Well, let's see, that would be about, yeah, about then. And the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with severe plagues because of Abram's wife, Sarai. So Pharaoh sent for Abram and said, what have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? He evidently got to her first. Why did you say she's my sister? So that I took her as my wife. Now, I'm reading from the Holman Christian Standard Bible. And you know that I pick up different Bibles for different reasons. This is the night, Wednesday night, we usually are using the, or my whole plan for the Old Testament was using the Dead Sea Scrolls, first English translation of them. But because so much of the book of Genesis is missing, I just pick up different Bibles. I will tell you, because I have a collection, I have about 5 new Bibles that I haven't shown some of you. Because I have this big collection of Bibles, there are certain things, if I want to check out a new Bible and I don't have time to read it all the way through, certain verses, this is a verse which will read differently in different versions. I'm going to reach over and get another Bible, just anyone, but let me read this. So that I took her as my wife. He's saying, because you've said she's my sister, I took her as my wife. Now, my memory tells me, let me just grab a couple of Bibles. Let me take a children's NIV, and let's get a King James. Can I get one without getting up from here? Let's see. I may have to take a different one. Here's a King James. It's all beat up, but it is a King James. All right, so we are looking at 12:19. Genesis 12:19. I just had a feeling that there's something different about that verse. So Pharaoh sent for Abram. What have you done to me? He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? That way, I took her to be my wife. That says the same thing. This is New International Version, but the kids' version. It simply means they do not choose language that is not in children's vocabulary according to school readers at that time. Let's get King James. This print is so small, but I think I can make it out. This is the English Bible that traveled with me when I was preaching out of a Spanish Bible, which is even more worn out than this during my days as an evangelist in the 50s. So we go here to Genesis. I don't know how I ever read print this small. Why didst thou? Let's see. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, she is my sister? So I might have taken her. The other two versions are newer than the King James. And they say, I took her for my wife. But King James was the only Bible around when I was young. And it says, why saidst thou, she's my wife, my sister. Now therefore, so that I might have taken her to be my wife. So I'll leave you with the interpretation. I can do one other thing. I can check out another language. See if I can reach a Bible in another language and translate it from here. Here we go. Santa Biblia. This is an old version, which is in Spanish, similar to King James in English. And we go to Genesis 12. ¿Por qué dijiste? Why did you say? Es mi hermana, it's my sister. Poniéndome en ocasión, giving me the occasion, de tomarla para mi mujer. I'm going to back up and read the whole sentence instead of a piece of one. This is my sister, putting upon me the occasion to take her as my wife. So this one's kind of in between, meaning that you put me into a situation where I might have, possibly did. So we don't know. But you see, that's the way you study the Bible, especially when we have all these new versions. Okay, now let me finish this up. Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave his men orders about him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. I think we haven't chatted for a while. If I go into the next portion, the next thing that happens is the separation of Lot and Abram, which I told you at the beginning of this lesson and video that we would get to. I think I'm going to end right here and show you the visual again, and then turn off the video. And today, this pen needs to be thrown out because it's not working. Let's take this one. This is 10, 26, 16. Okay, let me remind you now of the things in this visual. We have at the top Terah. He has 4 offspring. Abram, a daughter Sarai, Nahor, and Haran. So Abram and Sarai are brother and sisters. They have different mothers, but Terah is the father of both of them. Then he has Nahor and another son named Haran. Haran had a daughter named Milcah, and Milcah married Haran's brother, Nahor. They produced, Milcah and Haran together produced a son named Lot, and Haran died in before any of the family left there and went anywhere. Then they go from to Haran. Their purpose is to go to Canaan, but they get to a place and stop there. And the name of it happens to be Haran. It's just my opinion that they probably gave that name to the place. But that's where they get to a place named Haran. And Terah, the father, takes his son Abraham, his daughter Sarai, and his grandson Lot. And they go to a place, and I can't read the name from where I am. Oh, from Haran. Now they're going to go from Haran to Canaan. Canaan is what we now call Egypt. On the way, when they get there, there is a famine. So they go to Egypt. When they get to Egypt, in parentheses, I have the word king. When they get to Egypt is when they have the agreement that she will be named sister but not wife. And they leave Egypt. The next thing here on this visual is Sodom, and that we haven't gotten to yet. But when we get there, is when we have a division between uncle and nephew, because they both have a lot of wealth, herds, and they need more space. And so they separate. So I'm going to close this video at this time. Hang on, I'll be right back to my live group. And to the rest of you, until the next video, blessings on you.